There we go. Got some audio now. We are live right now. Doing this on the fly, very much, simply because of everything that's been happening right now. What we're going to be talking about today is the indictment of the president. But I do want to push this out so people can jump in here. So we're going to wait for just a second before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this. Because, yeah, this is a very big deal, very historical. We want everyone to know what's going on. So, yeah, pushing this out on just a couple different places here. We are on Twitter now. You can follow us at Real Vet Nation because you don't want to be fooled by who the imposters are. We will have our normal show later on tonight. We just this is big with the president, so I just want to make sure that we're talking about this. I don't want to really spend a ton of time on it on tonight's show. I do have Conspiracy Kitty. He's right down here. He's very involved in this, and with this show, we have already talked about it, about several of the things about this case. In fact, I am going to put that into the chat logs here of the show. So those who are interested, we've done a whole show about this whole classification, declassification, holding on to stuff. So I do want to put that in the comments right now, which is what I'm doing. So if you want to check that out, that's where I really go into a very nerdy deep dive on all the pertaining laws. What's going on with today's show? No, TC, this is not allowed. This is just because of what's been happening. We wanted to get it out there live because this is ongoing. We'll talk more about it on today's show. And yes, I am absolutely a nerd. Thank you. So when you are in the military and you have to get a clearance, you have to know about how to handle classified material. You have to know at least where the applicable laws for your service, where they are. I'm fortunate that I took this training not only for the DoD, but also with the Department of State, because I worked at an embassy for a time, over a year. And both departments have different laws that govern them. But what's interesting is this is an executive power, and it always goes up. And, you go to, I believe it's, Article 2 of the Constitution, talks about the powers of the presidency. And all executive power comes from the executive, meaning the president. Every single power under the executive branch. Everyone gets their authority from the president. So the president, he doesn't answer to Congress about executive laws and executive regulations. Sorry, Conspiracy Kitty is insistent upon leaning on the keyboard, so he throws things off a little bit. Sorry about that. Oh, and he's chewing on my headphone cable. Please do not. I will get to all the conspiracy stuff. We will get there. So, with all these laws, they all come from the executive. Staying in embassy suites isn't working at an embassy. Very true. I worked at the embassy in Abu Dhabi, and yeah, you're gonna act like a little baby, and you're gonna be good on camera. So, I'm fortunate because I've been in two different parts of the government that both answer to the president. They're both parts of the executive branch. A bureaucrat doesn't tell the president what to do. What is actually considered classified material comes from the president. Yeah, there are laws and stuff that are passed, but those laws are then interpreted by the executive branch, meaning the president. anyone who has authority on these gets their authority from the president. This indictment is just a way to attempt to remove a top candidate for the top office. That's all this is. And it's going to backfire, quite honestly. If you're looking at the polls, Trump is not only ahead for the Republican nomination, he's also leading Biden. The Biden administration has not been very good. It doesn't have many wins to its credit. And overall, people are pretty dissatisfied, and he's got really low. I think he's at 30% approval rating, which is not good for a president. So he, this is a way to try to remove a political rival. This is unprecedented in this country. It is not in a good way for this country. I know I did not serve thinking this is the type of country I wanted to be, you know, wanted to have. These are purely political moves. The polls show that. People think that this is a political move, so it really doesn't do anything for justice for justice in America. Yeah, I agree. The president is not above the law, but there are times where the president gets to dictate what the law is. He gets to dictate what is classified material. He gets to dictate what is a presidential record. He gets to dictate when records get disposed of. The National Archives is part of the executive branch. They all report to the president. So all these things that people are throwing out there and saying that, well, the president can't do this. Yes, he can. And, you know, for all these records, the moment Trump left the White House with him, that's an act by the president. It's a physical act. That alone can be argued in court quite successfully that that is an act of declassification. That's him. In fact, by law or by judicial review, when Clinton took records and was sued about them, they said no. By the president removing those records, they became presidential records, just by the act of removing them. That's perfectly legal. The court has ruled on that. So, with this indictment, it should be tossed. It should be on its face wrong. The Presidential Records Act is quite clear. The Espionage Act, which is yeah, by the way, it's the Espionage and Sedition Act. It's not without history. So I'll give you an example. In 1920, Eugene Debs sat in a prison cell running for president. He had been convicted of the Espionage and Sedition Acts. It's clearly a way to stifle free speech. The Espionage and Sedition Acts, there's even a very good debate on their constitutionality, because if you say someone is committing espionage by their mere words alone, well, how do we have free speech then? Now, treason is defined in the Constitution, but it's only during war, and it's an act against the government on behalf of an enemy. That is not what this is. Now, there's lots of people saying, "Oh, he could have given them to a foreign power." Again, we have laws that determine how these records were supposed to be handled, and the president gets to choose. Since these are his records, he gets to choose. Every president, when they leave office, they get to choose. Yeah, these are going to be my records here. These ones are going to be National Archives, and these ones are going to be, owned by whatever administration of the government is out there. So that's what he gets to do. And for anyone coming in and saying, no, he doesn't, like the Presidential Records Act, it's clear. If you don't like it, get rid of that act, because it gives them the full authority to do that. Now, when we're talking, these are criminal charges. And now let's talk criminal law. Whenever there's two laws that are, one says you can do something and the other one says it's against the law, and they're butting like that. Talk to any lawyer; they'll tell you it always errs on the side of it's not against the law then, because it has to be clearly against the law. You can't be given any type of um, leeway. And I'll give you the famous case just a couple years ago was Kyle Rittenhouse. People were like, well, an 18-year-old can't carry a weapon. Well, in one law it said you couldn't, and in another law it said you could. And quite very open cases, or yeah, for fishing, hunting, and it gave some really vague reasons to be allowed to carry. So when it went to the trial, the judge was like, okay, yeah, I've heard both sides, but it's it's the stalemate, so we rule on the side of it's not against the law. You, as the citizen, get the benefit of the doubt in that case, which I think is a very, very strong precedent that is important for this country, because we have innocent until proven guilty. And, when the government decides to be vague, we should be uh, absolutely on the right side of the law, because the government hasn't made it clear to us. So people who say, no, the Presidential Records Act doesn't apply, it absolutely does. And it goes right against what they're uh, claiming here with the Espionage Act. So those two alone, this judge, Judge Cannon, who is a Trump appointee, should throw it out. Now there are people out there saying this judge should recuse themselves because they're a Trump appointee. Well, that isn't necessarily a strong reason. Now, if they were someone who had a personal relationship with Trump, I would say yes, absolutely. But lots of judges, it would be like saying, if I were suing Trump as a, my role as in the military, as a military officer, someone could say you were promoted because of Trump, because he was the commander in chief. Every promotion goes in front of him, gets warrant signed. And the lower it is, the more they do the printed signature and whatnot on the commission. But that there's no personal relationship there. He just sees a name on the paper and says, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I like it." In the cases of judges, they're actually nominated by the senators from the state where the judges live. So the fact that they give the names to Trump and say, hey, these are the qualified judges. Trump picks names from the thing, submits them to Congress, or the Senate. The Senate then confirms them. That's not a direct relationship. So the judge does not need to recuse because they were appointed by Trump. That's ridiculous. We would get nothing done as it applied to lawsuits with presidents if that were the case. You would have 50% of the judges thrown the hell out. It'd be ridiculous. So that's not a valid argument. But the Presidential Records Act, the Presidential Records Act, and the constitutionality of the Espionage and Sedition Act, that I do think that needs to be challenged. I think it will be challenged. I'm seeing other people, such as the one leader of the Oath Keepers. He was convicted of sedition. I hope people fight that, because I believe totally that's an unconstitutional law. Since Brandenburg v. Ohio, and if you study that case of Brandenburg, it's clearly against the Constitution. It's clearly against the First Amendment. You have a right to say whatever you want. Just because I say something and someone acts doesn't make me liable. I have to deliberately try to, I'd have to be like, get him, get him. A direct call to violence, not an indirect. I can't say we need to burn these houses down, and then some wacko goes and burns down a house. Doesn't make me liable for that. I would have to be like, go to this house, 1142 Elm, and burn it down. That is me causing an act. So that's why the constitutionality of the Espionage and Sedition Act, I think, is eventually going to go in front of the Supreme Court and mostly get tossed. If there's an act related to it, yes, I can see that going. And the Espionage Act, taking records as a president, you've got to get out of jail free card because they passed the Presidential Records Act. That's the way it works. Um, this is just a political ploy. Now I want to get into Trump as a nominee. This is guaranteeing that he's going to be the Republican nominee, without a doubt. He was already going to be the nominee, but this is going to guarantee it. You now have his with the exception of Asa Hutchinson, which that guy doesn't have a chance in hell. Everyone else is coming out in favor of Trump because they know that this is not a just move. This does not help the American people in any way. So the next closest competitor is DeSantis. He's already come out and said, yeah, this is BS, what's happening to Trump. So when you have that, you're elevating Trump. He's the leader. The Democrats have made him the leader of the Republican Party yet again, instead of just letting them all slug it out and throw dirt at each other. So now Trump doesn't have to throw dirt at anybody. He can sit back, look presidential, and walk right in. And that's what's going to happen, because this is going to be dragged out for a little bit. Again, I think Judge Cannon eventually will dismiss all these charges with dismiss them with prejudice. I think that'll, and if the judge doesn't, I think the Supreme Court will, and this will very quickly, because federal courts don't move very fast. But in terms of federal court movement, it will move very quickly up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will actually get involved and say, no, these issues are for the American people to decide in the voting booth. It's not for an attorney general. It's not for a prosecutor. It's not for a jury to decide. This is for the American people. This is a political question. And it's been treated like that with virtually every president since the Presidential Records Act was passed. And I don't doubt that that's going to happen. Just who's going to be the one to throw it out and at what speed? I think it will happen before the election. Quite honestly, I think it's in Trump's benefit if it happens after the election. Primarily because then he can, say he's being persecuted, and he is. No other president has been held to these type of standards. Got something making noise above me here. Trump has never looked presidential, really. Yeah, I mean, that is okay. That is the problem of the media when it comes to Trump. What they do is they'll take clips of Trump and dice it up and try to make him worse than what he is. What they should just do is show him completely unedited and just say, you people decide for yourself. Because he's the type of guy, he has made himself look bad in the past. He will do it in the future. It's kind of like censoring a book. The more you censor a book, the more people want to read it because they want to know, well, why is this so bad? That's how it is with Trump. When you try to censor him, or when you try to make him make it look like he say things that he didn't, you look worse, and that's what's been happening. No one trusts the media today. There is no Walter Cronkites out there. No one trusts the media at all, and the media's done it to themselves. This has been, just a huge nut roll for the media. They've never learned their lesson about Trump. And quite honestly, in the military, I'll be careful with what I say because I don't want to get banned. Trump is an a-hole. That's quite honest. He's an a-hole. And I love him for it. I really do. Because he will say what everybody's thinking. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and I used to go to this bar where it was a members only bar, and my grandparents belonged there, my parents belonged there, and I used to go there, and I remember sitting, there with my grandpa, listening to the people talk. Trump talks like all those people in that bar, and this was very blue collar, in a blue collar Rust Belt city. And that's why people of that area, why they love him so much. My hometown, which is very Democratic, almost went for Trump. Like, he was the first real player. He's taking people who traditionally are Democrats, who are probably a little bit more independent than what their parents are, and they've gone completely on. Yep, that is, Lion knows that's how they talk in Toledo. Yep, that's where I grew up, South Toledo. And they love him. They love him. And I always said I knew Hillary was going to lose back in 2015 because she drove. She was going to Iowa, and there was this very big article about her kicking off her campaign, and they talked about stopping in Maumee, Ohio, which is a suburb. Literally, the the house where I spent from like 10, where I was 10 till when I moved out of my parents' house. The house that that was less than a mile from the Chipotle where they stopped. And she didn't talk to anybody. She went unnoticed. She had a hat on and glasses. And I was like, she just lost the race. She lost the race because these are swing voters. This is an area swing voter. Joe the plumber with Obama, he was just 2 miles away where that exchange happened, and that's I know that area. I grew up there, and she didn't want to interact with the people, and I knew she wasn't going to win. Trump is beloved by those people. There are people I know who are lifelong Democrats who are talking about how screwed over Trump is getting, and they will vote for him. And the thing is, if someone like DeSantis were to run, they're not going to vote for DeSantis. They look at DeSantis the way they look at DeWine. They really don't like DeWine up there, and yeah, that's what I see with all this. They're pushing the Republican nomination absolutely in Trump. And what's interesting if you watch these polls is the polls, like there was one poll that had, I believe, Joe Biden by 10 points going into 2020. That same poll has Trump up by 7 now. Think about that. Trump up by 7 over Biden. Like that means all of those swing states are no longer swing states. You now have to move other states like New Mexico and Maine and New Hampshire. Those are your new swing states uh, based upon the current polling. And the thing is, this is going to do so much for Trump in terms of polling because all those people who are on the fence are going to be like, he's getting screwed over. So, yeah, I don't like that. And a lot of them don't like what Biden's been doing to begin with. Like I said, it's a presidency without a lot of wins to it. Obama didn't have a lot of wins, but he did have a couple high profile ones like Obamacare that everyone can point to and say, well, he did that. Other than pulling out of Afghanistan, which I don't think is a win, I don't think anyone can really point to anything that Biden has done. I believe that the economy is going to be the most important issue again. We don't have COVID to deal with, so I think we're getting a perfect storm of Trump. This just reeks of desperation, and as it goes on, it's like the dossier. Eventually, people just got tired of hearing about it because it was like, okay, well, show us the proof of this stuff, and they never could. There's still people. I pointed out on Twitter earlier today to someone. There's still people talking about the P tape. Like, we're like 8 years away. Where the hell is this thing? If you think it's out there, why hasn't it been shown? You know, but Hunter Biden, we got tons of pictures of him smoking crack. Which is hilarious because we were told that stuff didn't exist and it was all Russian disinformation. But yeah, this is there. It's not going to change anybody's opinion. I think if anything, it's going to take the people who are leaning towards Trump, make them way more Trump. Take the people who are already against Trump, push them way more against him. And I don't think anything is going to really change out of this. So this is strategic. They did this early too on to get the bump early. The surge hits summer. Yep. This is like one of those last minute surprises that they should have. If they were going to do this, that's when you do that, like an October surprise type of thing. But I don't think it's. I don't think this is going to be effective. I really think the judge will throw it out. I think if the judge doesn't throw it out, then the motion to dismiss will make its way up the chain to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will be like, "This is ridiculous." Like, quite honestly, what they should have done was impeach him again, because again, this is a political question, but they don't have the votes to impeach him, so that's why they didn't do it that way. And everyone knows that they don't have the votes to impeach. They impeached twice. They didn't have the votes to convict. I think impeaching without at least being close to the votes to convict is not good. And I would say that even with the Republicans right now that they're saying that there's proof of Biden receiving a bribe, they're probably going to vote to impeach at some point. But if you don't have 60 votes in the Senate, it's kind of a fool's errand. You're just going to give them eventually a win. Trump can be like, I was acquitted twice. You're going to try this a third time. And this is going to be tried in Miami. And Miami was a swing area. Miami-Dade County was a swing county, but last several elections have been solidly Republican. So I think finding a jury to convict is going to be rather difficult. I don't think it'll even get to that, but yeah, so I just want to come on and talk about that. We will have our show in about an hour and a half. We'll do our normal show. We have a great guest, Greg. He's the flying auditor. You can find him on YouTube. He's going to be on the show. We'll be talking about that. And just a little teaser for TC, I do have some of my elevator pitches, so we'll be doing that bit again. It'll be a fun time. For all of you who joined in today, thank you for being worth serving.